Hello everybody, myself Dr. Varsha Puranik, working as a consultant ophthalmologist in HV Desai Eye Institute, and today I'm going to speak about the tips and tricks that should be followed during the SICS surgery.
Dr. Varsha Mangiraj works as a consultant ophthalmologist in cataract and low vision services at HV Desai Eye Hospital, Pune. She has completed her medical retina fellowship from Saswari Hospital, Aurangabad, and has more than 9 years of experience in her field.
The main aim of selecting this topic for the webinar series is to educate the postgraduate students and the beginners regarding the basic principles of small incision cataract surgery, to make them aware about the common mistake they made during the different steps of SICS and to teach them the tricks to avoid that and to train them so that they become a good surgeon. So I'm going to discuss the steps of SICS under these heading and what are the measures to avoid the complication and how to tackle with the complication if they happen during the surgery. As we all know that scleral tunnel incision was introduced in early 80s in an attempt to provide the better wound healing and less induced surgically astigmatism. Girard and Hoffman introduced in 1984 this posterior scleral incision as the scleral tunnel incision. Later on, the modification in the steps of surgery in the form of frown incision and triplanar incision introduced to reduce the wound-related astigmatism and to increase the incision-related wound stability. So, the modification in the incision shape makes it more acceptable due to the reduced astigmatism leading to a good vision. Now starting with the depression and draping, the painting and draping of the lids and the area around the eye is performed with a 10% betadine. A 5% betadine is instilled into the eye. Drape and wire speculum is applied and care is taken not to have the eyelashes in the field of surgery. Then comes the bridal suture. The bridal suture is the main important step in performing or in starting with the SICS surgery. If it doesn't come properly, you should not proceed with the further surgery. So what are the function of the bridal suture? It turns the globe in a particular direction. It gives control over the moving eye, which is very important for the beginners. It holds the globe steady. In a deep set eye and small eyes, it can be used to lift the eye and the eye become prominent. Bridal suture is taken with a superior rectus holding forceps and curved needle threaded with a 6-0 silk suture. Superior rectus, which is located at a 7.7 millimeter from the limbus. So the bridal suture, whenever we take the superior incision, the bridal suture is taken at this distance. While if the incision is placed temporally, the lateral rectus bridal suture is taken, which is situated at 6.9 millimeter from the limbus. So the main treated complication of this bridal suture is the perforation. So how to avoid this perforation? So these are the following, there are certain tips which should be followed to avoid this perforation. First, pass the needle exactly under the area where the muscle is grabs. Then second, slightly tilt the forceps holding the muscle. The third one is tip of the needle should be directed upwards after the initial pass and take only a small bite. Do not take a broad bite. If one suspect a perforation, one will feel the softness of the globe. If the cataract is soft, assess the damage and you can proceed with a cryo or laser followed by the surgery. If the nucleus is dense and one cannot see the damage, then you should perform the B scan and should proceed accordingly. The other complication are the bleeding and laceration and avulsion of the rectus muscle. To avoid the bleeding, avoid the large conjunctival vessels while taking a bite. Coming to the conjunctival peritomy, conjunctival peritomy is done with a conjunctival scissor and Colibri's forceps. Fornix-based conjunctival flap is taken, and the ideal conjunctival peritomy exposes a blue limbal zone. A proper blunt dissection ensure that there is a bare sclera at the bed. You should remove the tenons very clearly, as a presence of tenons may lead to the irregular incision, incorrect depth assessment, and inadequate cauterization. Next comes the cautery. Cautery can be applied with a ball and point cautery or a bipolar cautery. The main aim of the cautery is to have a bloodless field to have a proper visualization. Then the points that should you remember during the cautery are avoid forceful rubbing of the cautery tip to the scleral surface. Avoid cautery to the blue zone bleeders, and our scleral bleeders should be cauterized. Excessive scleral cautery may lead to the scleral thinning and scleral necrosis. It may lead to the poor wound healing and higher surgically induced astigmatism later on. Always remember that do not apply the cautery when the scleral incision and tunneling is done, as it may cause a fish mouthing and subsequent wound leak. Coming to the main part of the scleral incision, there are three components of the scleral incision. First one is the external scleral incision, which can be made either with a blade or with a surgical knife. You can use either an 11 number blade or a 15 number blade. Then comes your sclerocorneal tunnel, which is constructed with a crescent knife. Then comes your internal corneal incision, which is made with a keratome. So this is a picture showing your scleral tunnel. The orange part showing the external scleral incision, while the green zone showing the internal lip. The yellow zone showing the scleral pockets. Now, what are the principles of the cataract incision and tunnel formation? Always think a globe as a double wall structure. So one wall is a roof of the tunnel, while the other wall is the floor of the tunnel. When the pressure is applied from within, that is we do during the AC reformation, the AC reformation of the anterior chamber, the two wall gets closed and our wound is secured. So during the initiation of the incision, always keep the blade perpendicular to the scleral surface. An angle or a slanted incision will cause more separation of the lip and subsequently leading to the wound sagging or a wound gaping. Now, what are the characteristics of the external scleral incision? Size of the incision depends upon the density of the nucleus. When we are going to operate on a harder cataract, the incision should be large, while when we are going to operate on a soft cataract, the incision should be small. It should be ideally located at about 1.5 millimeter from the limbus, from the conjunctival insertion or from the limbus. The ideal depth is half to 3/4 of the scleral thickness, and it should be a uniformly deep along whole of its length. Now, depending upon the shape of the incision, there are three types of the incision. First one is the smile, second one is a straight, and third one is the frown incision. Always remember that corneal astigmatism is directly proportional to the cube length of the incision, while it is inversely proportional to the distance of the distance from the limbus. Coming to the type of the incision, the first picture is showing smile incision. Here, the shape of the incision is parallel to the limbus, while in a second part, it is not parallel to the limbus and edges fall back. So, in a first incision or a smile incision, there is more against the rule astigmatism, as the incision made flattens the vertical part of the cornea, while in a straight incision, there will be the less against the rule astigmatism as compared to the smile incision. Remember, both of these incisions are good for the nucleus delivery, especially in the case of the beginners, but you should prefer a straight incision because the wound stability is more in a case of straight incision. Now later on, advancement in the incision done in the form of frown incision, chevron incision, and inverted Batwing incision. All of these incisions are good as it induces a lesser astigmatism as compared to the smile and a straight incision, as it follows the corneal astigmatism mathematics, as the edges are far behind from the edges are far from the limbus, they induces the less astigmatism. Coming to the sclerocorneal tunnel construction. First, the scleral plane is made with a crescent knife. It is very important to find a right plane first. After initiation, the tunnel is made initially in a forward swirling movement and depth is judged by the visibility of the blade transclerally. So the sclerocorneal tunnel should be at a uniform depth. The optimal depth is about 50 to 75%. The blade should be moderately visible in a corrective plane. If it is hardly visible, that means your plane is deep and you may lead into the premature entry. While if it is clearly visible, that means the plane is superficial and it may cause a buttonholing. So keratotomy, in the keratotomy, entry is made with a bevel down keratome by the dimple down technique. So the ideal tunnel will be located at 1.5 millimeter to 2 millimeter from the anterior border of limbus. It is situated at a depth of half to 3/4 thickness of the sclera and the internal corneal lip will be 1.5 millimeter. The wound constructed should be a self-sealed and astigmatically neutral wound. Coming to the capsulotomy, the opening should be large enough to accommodate the lens. It should be sufficiently stable to prevent the anterior capsular tear from continuing to the posterior capsule. It should ideally allow the 360-degree of optic overlap. The three types of capsulorhexis are continuous curvilinear capsulorhexis, can openers, and envelope. In our institute, we usually prefer continuous curvilinear capsulorhexis, that is CCC. Now, what are the advantages of this CCC? It allows safe hydrodissection and it allows the in the back lens rotation. It permits the easy cortical cleanup. Continuous overlap of anterior capsule over the optic may help to reduce the formation of the PCO. And in the event of PCR, it allows the sulcus implantation with the optimal optic capture. Coming to the hydrodissection. Hydrodissection is the separation of the cortex from the nucleus. Always remember that prior to hydrodissection, wash all the OVDs from the anterior chamber. There are certain tips which you should follow during the hydrodissection. Always perform a multi-quadrant hydrodissection. Always perform a hydrodissection in a slow manner, in a slow controlled manner, and place the cannula beneath the edge of the anterior capsule, slowly injecting the fluid in a well-controlled and always decompress the nucleus after each wave so that there will be no pressure inside the anterior chamber. To avoid the capsular block syndrome, titrate the amount of the fluid injected into the eye and wash all the OVDs from the anterior chamber. Now, what is a capsular block syndrome? The capsular block syndrome is a condition which can arise due to uninhibited injection of fluid during the hydrodissection, where the excessive forward bulge blocks the anterior capsular opening and traps the fluid in the capsular bag. It can also lead to the posterior capsular rupture. What are the signs of the capsular block syndrome? One should see a forward bulge of the lens. There is the prominence of the capsulorhexis margin and shallowing of the AC, which is not relieved by the attempted lens decompression. The blockage at the anterior capsule does not allow fluid to egress, and is in such a situation, a frequent attempt of rotation would damage the zonular integrity and may lead to the PCR and subsequent nucleus drop. So, what are the measures to avoid if this situation happens? You can give a few peripheral nicks at the capsulorhexis margin that can relieve the pressure. In a certain condition, such as the high myopes, vitrectomized eye, traumatic cataract, pseudoexfoliation, posterior lenticonus, and complicated cataract, hydrodissection should be done very cautiously as there are more chances of the zonular dilasis and subsequently the nucleus drop. While the hydrodelineation is the process where the endonucleus is separated from the epinucleus, and it is usually performed in the cases of the posterior polar cataract. Nucleus delivery. The nucleus delivery can be divided into two types. The first one is the prolapse of the nucleus into the anterior chamber, that is known as the luxation, while the second one is the delivery of the nucleus from the anterior chamber. So the first part or the luxation can be done under the hydroprolapse, under the viscoprolapse or a Sinskey hook. In usually our institute, we usually prefer the hydroprolapse. In my video, I will going to show you how the hydroprolapse or how the hydrodissection helps to luxation of the nucleus. Hydroprolapse is usually preferable in the case of ideal or soft nucleus, but in these, a large size of CCC is required, while the viscoprolapse is suitable for moderate to hard cataract. In this, there should be adequate pupillary dilatation along with the adequate large size capsular axis. For moderate to hard cataract, we can prefer a Sinskey hook or a dialer. In a case of small rigid pupil, stretch pupilloplasty or multiple sphincterotomies, or you can use a pupil expander like a Mal-Union rings. In a case of moderate to hard cataract, always use a copious amount of the visco so that the corneal endothelium will get protected. The posterior polar cataract, we use a lollipop technique where with a hydrodissection, we lift the central part of the nucleus and we can expose or we can take that central part of the nucleus in the anterior chamber and protecting as a epinucleus as a posterior protecting part. It can be done with a Blumenthal's technique or with a irrigating wire vectis. In my videos, I will show the techniques of hydroprolapse. In our institute, we routinely do hydroexpression in a case of soft cataract, while for medium to hard cataract, the combination of viscoexpression along with a wire vectis is used. Now, cortex removal is a prerequisite for proper IOL in the back implantation of the IOL. With a Simcoe cannula, the cortex removal is done in the most easily accessible part, that is inferior 3 to 4 clock hours. A side port incision made at a 9 o'clock help in aspirating the cortex from 3 o'clock. The basic principle is to remove the anterior leaf of the cortex and pull downwards towards the posterior capsule. But remember, not towards the center of the eye. So there will be the less stress on the zonules and in the periphery of the capsular bag. This technique is very useful in the cases of pseudoexfoliation and in the eyes with the acute closure glaucoma, where there is an inherent weakness of the zonules are present. The subincisional cortex can be removed with a side port. Coming to the IOL implantation, it can be done under the viscoelastic, under the continuous irrigation, or in the air bubble. Under the air bubble, the leading haptic is inserted along with the optic with a McPherson forceps and place the IOL in the back, while the trailing haptic can be inserted with the use of forceps or Sinskey hook and a dialer. Now, what are the confirmatory signs that your IOL in the back? You will see the stretch lines in the center of the posterior capsule due to the maximal distension of the capsular back due to correct placement of the optics and haptics. Then one can see a shiny appearance of the anterior capsular rim over the haptic. One can also use the blunt instrument to push the IOL to ensure that it is under the back or it is under the capsule. It is very important to remove the viscoelastic thoroughly after the implantation of the IOL. The viscoelastic under the IOL is removed by placing the Simcoe cannula beneath the IOL while aspirating port facing up. The viscoelastic is displayed simply by irrigation, followed by aspiration of the viscoelastic in the AC by irrigating Simcoe cannula in the center of the chamber, from the inferior part of the AC and then all around with the aspirating port facing upward. At the last, the integrity of the wound should be checked with the formation of the anterior chamber with a balanced salt solution and hydrating the side port. You can check the integrity by a gentle tap at the limbus diametrically opposite to the wound with the hydrocannula. Side port closure should be done by hydrating the corneal stroma. Always remember The tip of the cannula should be kept away from the DM or the Descemet membrane. Otherwise, it will cause a DM detachment. Avoid injecting too much force. A well-formed AC gives the firm feeling of resistance and does not give away on applying the pressure. The suturing is required in the cases of leaking sclerocorneal tunnel, in the cases of premature entry, in the cases where there is high positive pressure, in a myopic and pediatric patient, in the combined surgeries, and in the cases where there is a PCR with a disturbed vitreous phase. One can give or one can take a suture to reduce or to decrease against the rule astigmatism if the tunnel size is more than 6.5 millimeter. Conjunctival closure is very important. It can be done with a cautery or it can be done with a suture. Good closure is very important when you take a temporal sclerocorneal incision. Now we are going to see some of the videos and how we can do the modification in the steps of the surgery depending upon the type of the cataract and the grade of the nucleus. So I have taken a frown incision and this is a soft cataract with a PSC component. Prolapse of the nucleus into the anterior chamber is done with the hydrocannula only, as well as the delivery of the nucleus is also done with the hydro. CIL is implanted with the leading haptic and optic followed by the trailing haptic. Thorough removal of the viscoelastic has been done. AC deformation done, and side port is hydrated. Now this is the second video. Here all the steps apart from the nucleus delivery method are same. So again I have taken a Frown incision. This cataract is moderately hard, the grade being NS2 to NS3. One can modify the different techniques of nucleus delivery as per the type of the cataract. So hydrodissection is done with a hydrocannula, and prolapse of the nucleus into the anterior chamber is done with a hydro only. Here you can see a nice golden ring. But there is slight difficulty with the hydro expression of the nucleus. So we again put the nucleus into the AC, push a lot of visco, and then tried the nucleus delivery with the wire vectis. Now the iron is implanted after the thorough cortex removal. All the viscoelastic material is removed with a Simcoe cannula. AC is well formed and side port is hydrated. So I think in this topic we have covered all the precautions and measures that a beginner or PG should take while performing a SICS surgery. I hope this will be very useful for the beginners and PGs. Thank you for the patient listening.